See, I'm going to discuss blood vascular system of Pila globosa. Pila globosa is commonly known as apple snail. You might be thinking that why this animal has been given such an importance for discussing its different systems. There is a reason behind this. See, this animal is amphibious. That is, it can live an aquatic life as well as terrestrial life. See, it is quite active during rainy season, and you can see this animal crawling on the ground mainly in the moist areas, and it could be seen inside the water also. This is possible because it possesses pulmonary sac for terrestrial mode of life, for aerial mode of respiration, and when it is drowned in the water, then it respires with the help of its gill, which is also referred as ctenidium. So this is important in that way, and we find several adaptations accordingly in this animal. So let us see how does its blood vascular system help this animal to supply oxygenated blood to various parts, and what are different parts of the blood vascular system, and also about its blood itself. See, first of all, let us get aware that its heart pumps its blood into arteries. So there are several arteries, and these arteries then divide into its branches, which are referred as arterioles. So arterioles are fine branches, and these arterioles may open into lacunae. Lacunae are actually small spaces where blood gets accumulated, or if that space is quite large in size, then it is referred as sinus. So arteries pour their blood into sinus, and then from these sinuses or lacunae, the blood will be going into venules, which are actually fine branches of veins, and the venules combine and form vein, major veins. So this is the way by which blood flows, that is, heart will be pumping its blood into arteries, that blood will be going to its branches, arterioles. Then there would be spaces called as lacunae or sinuses, and from such structures blood will be going to venules and then to vein. In this lower diagram you can see here, this one is the major artery dividing into its branches, arterioles, and then this is a sinus, which is larger space that will be located in specific parts of the animal's body, and then this blood will be going into venules and from venules to vein. So there would be flow of blood from this left side to the right side. Now this is referred as open blood vascular system, because in case of closed blood vascular system, what will happen? The arteries will divide into arterioles, and arterioles will give rise to fine capillaries. So instead of sinuses, you will find the presence of capillaries in case of closed blood vascular system, and rest of the things will be as such. In such cases where closed blood vascular system will be there, the lacunae or sinuses will be absent. Now, we know that mollusks and arthropods are known to possess open blood vascular system. So here the different parts of the blood vascular system are arteries, which supply blood to different parts of the body. Then there are veins, which collect blood from different parts of the body. And then there are sinuses, which are large blood spaces, and as I said, there could be presence of lacunae, which are small blood spaces located in different positions of the animal's body. Now you can see the structure of blood vascular system of Pila globosa. First of all, see here in this area, this is its heart. See, you can see the position of heart, and this heart is actually two chambered. See, this one is auricle, and this elongated portion is its ventricle, and the heart is surrounded by pericardium. This is a membranous structure which surrounds the heart, pericardium, and pericardial fluid will be present between the outer membrane of pericardium and this heart. So this heart is a muscular structure, and there is a single auricle and a single ventricle. Now you can see that there are three major veins which pour blood into the auricle, into the first chamber of this heart. The first, vein you can see here. Centrally you can see this one. This is efferent pulmonary vein. Efferent pulmonary vein collects blood from the pulmonary sac and then supplies this to the auricle. So you can think this way, that when animal is in terrestrial mode of life, okay, when it is in terrestrial mode of life, at that time it will be pulmonary sac that will help in aerial respiration, and the oxygenated blood will be mainly collected in efferent pulmonary vein, and then it will be poured into the auricle. But when the animal is in aquatic mode of life, then gills will be assisting in respiration. At that time, the oxygenated blood will be coming to the heart or to the auricle through efferent tenedial vein. So this efferent tenedial vein, it is collecting blood from the gill lamellae, and then it will supply this blood to the heart. And at both times, means when it is in aquatic mode or terrestrial mode, there will be third vein, that is actually efferent renal vein, and that efferent renal vein also supplies its blood to the heart, and this blood will then be pumped into ventricle. When the auricle will contract, then this blood will be pumped into ventricle. So ventricle, being highly muscular structure, very muscular, thick muscles form it. It is elongated structure. When this will contract, the blood will be flown into two major blood vessels. The anterior one, say this one is anterior, is referred as cephalic aorta. This is cephalic aorta. And the other one is visceral aorta. So these are two major blood vessels. The anterior blood vessel, or that blood vessel which will supply its blood mainly to the anterior side. Cephalic refers to head region, that is cephalic aorta, and the other one is visceral aorta, which supplies its blood mainly to visceral organs. And at the origin of this cephalic aorta, there is a ampulla-like structure which is referred as aortic ampulla. Its function is not very clear, but it is believed that it pulsates, or it regularly contracts and expands, helping in the circulation of blood. Now this cephalic aorta, it goes to the anterior side head region, and in the way it gives several branches, several fine arteries, and these arteries will be supplying blood to the adjacent regions. Like this is cutaneous artery, it will supply blood to the skin. Here is pericardial artery, this will supply blood to the pericardium and heart. Then this one is oesophageal artery, supplying blood to oesophagus. Then more anteriorly it gives branches to the left pallial artery, that is left side of mantle, and its branches are asphradial artery, supplying blood to the asphradium, which is a sensory structure. Then you can see here, this is siphonal artery, it supplies blood to the left siphon or left nuchal lobe, or you can say left pseudoepipodium. And then this artery, cephalic aorta, goes anteriorly and supply blood to the radular sac. So it is called as radular sac artery, that is the radula receives blood, or buccal mass receives blood through this artery. Then again it is going anteriorly, and its branches are optic artery, supplying blood to the eye. Then peneal artery, supplying blood to the copulatory structures, or the genital structures which are located in the branchial chamber. Then it is right siphonal artery, supplying blood to the right nuchal lobe or right pseudoepipodium. This one is right pallial artery, supplying blood to the right side of pallium or mantle. So these are the artery which are going in the anterior side through cephalic aorta. These branches come out. Then the other one, that is visceral aorta, it also gives several branches in the way, like pericardial artery, again supplying blood to the heart muscles and also to the pericardium. Then hepatic artery, it will supply blood to the gastric gland or hepatopancreas, which is a major gland present in the pila. Renal artery, it will supply this oxygenated blood to the renal organ, that is kidneys. Gastric artery, it will supply blood to the stomach. And then intestinal arteries, it supply blood to the intestine regions. So these are the arteries which are supplying blood to the visceral organs. As I said, the blood gets collected in the in certain sinuses. So let us have idea about such sinuses, and then we can see in the body there are mainly four major sinuses, because arterioles will supply their blood to the sinuses, and one sinus is anterior perivisceral sinus. Anterior perivisceral sinus actually receives blood or collects blood from parts receiving blood through cephalic aorta. So the blood coming from cephalic aorta will be actually collected in the anterior perivisceral sinus. Then the other sinus is anterior periintestinal sinus, that collects blood from visceral organs receiving blood through visceral aorta. Okay, so this one is anterior periintestinal sinus. And then branchiorenal sinus. It collects blood from the renal chambers, because renal organs receives blood for removal of nitrogenous waste. So then the blood will finally be collected in the renal chamber, means in the renal sinus. And the fourth one is pulmonary sinus, which collects blood from pulmonary sac. So these are four major sinuses. And then from these sinuses, the blood will be going into venules and then to vein. So you can see here, this one is a renal chamber. It is actually posterior renal chamber. And this one is anterior renal chamber. They also receive blood through the renal arteries. And such blood will get, it will be, from such blood the waste materials will be removed. And then there is a vein which is referred as efferent renal vein. That efferent renal vein will actually supply its blood to the heart. So you can say that this blood is free from nitrogenous waste. And as I said in the beginning itself, that this heart also receives blood from pulmonary sac and also from the gill. Now from this renal portion, the blood will be going to the tenedium through the afferent renal vein. So afferent renal vein actually supplies blood. Here is afferent tenedial vein, or afferent tenedial vein. This afferent tenedial vein, it is actually coming from the renal structure. See here, this renal organ, it is actually forming branchiorenal sinus, about which I just said. And the other one is perivisceral sinus, which is present in the visceral regions. And they supply their blood to the gill through the afferent tenedial vein. And from this afferent tenedial vein, the blood will be going to the gill lamellae, and then the oxygenated blood being collected at the surface of gill lamellae will then be mainly collected in the efferent tenedial vein, and it will then supply its blood to the auricle. So we can have idea about the movement of entire circulation of the blood by going through this diagrammatic presentation. As I said, it is auricle that mainly receives blood from three regions. One through efferent tenedial vein, that is from the gill region. It also receives blood from the pulmonary sac through pulmonary vein. So this pulmonary vein supplies its blood during terrestrial mode of life to the auricle. Then through aquatic respiration, when it will be surviving, then blood will be coming through efferent tenedial vein to this auricle, and at both situations blood will also be coming from the renal side through efferent renal vein. So auricle receives blood from these three uh, vessels, but at a time it will be receiving only from two places, either from the pulmonary sac and from the renal organ, or from tenedium and renal organ. Then this auricle, when contracts, the blood gets pumped to the ventricle, and when ventricle contracts, then the blood will be going into cephalic and visceral aorta. So these are two major aorta. Now from these aorta, the blood will be supplied to different parts of the body. So every part of the animal's body will receive blood from the arteries, which are branches of cephalic and visceral aorta. Then the blood gets collected mainly in these two sinuses, that is perivisceral sinus and periintestinal sinus. If perivisceral sinus receives blood, then this blood may go to pulmonary sac, okay, for aerial, during aerial mode of respiration, and it can also supply its blood to the branchiorenal sinus, that is to the region of renal organ. And then from this branchiorenal sinus, the blood will go to the gill through afferent tenedial vein, and then it will go to the tenedium. Perivisceral sinus also supplies its blood to anterior renal chamber, and from this anterior renal chamber, the blood may go to the branchiorenal sinus. Okay, and then the route is this one. Now, from different parts of the body, blood may also get collected in periintestinal sinus, which is located in the intestinal region. Now this periintestinal sinus, it can also supply its blood to perivisceral sinus, or it can send its blood into afferent renal sinus, means actually to the renal area through afferent renal sinus, and from this afferent renal sinus blood will be going to the anterior renal chamber, then to branchiorenal sinus, and then to gill through afferent tenedial vein. Or this periintestinal sinus will supply its blood to afferent renal vein. From this afferent renal vein, it will be supplied to posterior renal chamber, and from posterior renal chamber the blood will go to the heart through efferent renal vein. So we can have idea how blood flows through the different portions or different blood vessels of the animal's body. We can also see the composition of its blood. See, the blood in case of most of the mollusks, including this Pila globosa, that looks to be blue in color when oxygenated. So it is because of the presence of hemocyanin pigment, which actually contains copper instead of iron. In our case, the blood pigment is actually hemoglobin that looks red because in our red blood cells, the pigment present is hemoglobin, but which contains actually iron. But in case of Pila globosa, or as I said, in most of the gastropods and other mollusks, we find the presence of hemocyanin pigment, and that pigment is actually dissolved in the plasma instead of their presence in a specific kind of cell. We find the pigment getting dissolved in the plasma itself. So the blood actually is made up of two major things, one plasma and the other one the different kind of cells. Actually cells, they look very much similar in their structure, and they are referred as amoebocytes. Okay, so collectively they are referred as amoebocytes and plasma. These are two major compositions of blood, but as I said, the plasma contains hemocyanin pigment in it, and because of presence of copper in hemocyanin pigment, the blood looks blue in color, particularly when it is oxygenated. So these are the important things regarding blood vascular system in case of Pila globosa.